Hello and welcome to Paint the Edges with your hosts James Mack and James Thayer. Um, Look, I don't want to lie, and I fucking. Do you know what was so good? Okay, hold on, wait. We need magic. Oh, son of a bitch. Am I going full strength or half strength? Let's go half. Let's just dab. Let's just put our toe in the water for this. Um, yo, how that message made me laugh so much. So Thursday, Friday. I don't know, Thursday, Friday, just get a message from Marshall and be like, yo, I'm getting ahead of this because I'm listening to the podcast. This is what you need to do to set up the YouTube account. So, Marshall, fucking one, shout out you for listening to what we talk about. That's the first thing. Secondly, I'm so glad he reminded because I wouldn't have done it.
It was on your to-do list.
Dude, it was on my to-do list.
Your AI
and
is
you know
failing
what kept
you.
happening? No, AI is not failing me. Do you know what happened? It just kept getting pushed down the priority of things. It just prioritizes the tasks of like what's more important. Or like, hey, don't crash your car. Like that's pretty important in terms of this fucking drive. Yeah. Anyways, so that message came through, and Marshall was like, "Yo, it's up and running." So, not up and running. This is what you need to do, and he literally sent it to us in like a baby step. You could probably give that to a 3-year-old and they could set it up, and I'm so glad he did because it was the easiest and the best solution that we've had. So, with that being said, I feel like this is our first one on YouTube.
No promises, it might be.
Officially recorded that goes to YouTube. Listen, I think we might backdate some of the other ones, but I also don't know how much work is involved in that. No idea. Again, not on my to-do list. Definitely not on my to-do list because it won't get done at all. The sadder thing about this is you have a lovely background and I look like I live in a shed.
I mean, I don't know that I have a lovely background. I have a plain background. I feel like my background is, I have a radio background is how I would describe it. It is not for visual intrigue to any audience.
Any shape. I mean, it's better than not better. Sorry, it's definitely not better. The previous one was way better, where we had the two. I don't know. You would probably say a buck, but it looked like a kudu skull or like a springbok or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You had the two skulls in the background, and then you had like the paint the edges and the prescript flag. I was like, yo, that's the cave. That's the cave right there. It was just missing a rifle up on the wall. That's all I needed.
See, I feel like that's one of the things that we can't have going on to YouTube is being mindful of just.
Oh, do you know what was hilarious? So I told my dad that the platform we will be airing on the platform. He's like, you're gonna have to put up the not for kids under 18 with the way you swear. I was like, good point. We're probably never ever gonna you can monetize on YouTube, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you you hit the selector button of like not for underage content, it's like I don't think they monetize that in any shape or form. Then I think you get fucked. So one of two things is going to happen with us going to YouTube. We'll get banned. Yo, this is where the cancel comes.
Hopefully.
Hey, maybe this is where the cancel comes, is we get canceled on YouTube. Because of, I don't know, something like I'll wave, dude, I'm playing with a stabby device at this very moment in time. Also, 10 out of 10 recommend. Definitely 10 out of 10 recommend having these. This is the polyurethane ones. You've seen these?
I think so. Yeah, I think you've shown me
where it's
before.
obviously got like
nice
the triangular stabby. It's got the diamond device. So, but again, plastic. Anyways. It's probably going to land up us getting that or like the 3 other blades that I currently have. Look. Oh.
I like how this is the effort of let me 5 minutes in, let me see how I can push any restrictions or guidelines now that people can see me.
Now that people can see the shit that we do. I also was thinking about the other day, you guys don't know this, in one of the podcasts we knows, I had probably 4 liters or water by the time we had to do it. I literally sent Thayer a message while he was speaking. I'm like, yo, keep this shit going. I got to go to the bathroom while I'm pissing myself. Like, that's literally what's happening. Now, you gotta suddenly see me go off camera? Yo, I have to be way more We also know how I multitask. How the oh, I think we might have screwed me on this YouTube thing.
You'll adapt.
Do we think so? Do we know how autistic I am in terms of I don't like change. Change doesn't do well in my brain from these standpoints. Anyways, fuck, I forgot where we were gonna. Oh, PSL 1 is open for sale. So like, shout out Prescript. Obviously, they how much they sponsored the podcast. They
Powered
whatever.
by.
Powered by.
We'll keep using that.
Everything we do here is powered by Prescript from the inception of us, from an education standpoint of where we first kind of added to our principle base and really kind of had the veil taken off us, and we've had what light thy has been shed on what we think is fuck. That was a weird way to say it. Light thy has been shed. has been kind of shown in terms of what we are doing, and that all started 6 years ago. Am I right in saying that? 5-6 years? Did I mess up the dates and night times?
Sure.
All the time. Between
Yep.
5 to 6 years. Somewhere it's kind of like when a child, when someone's like, "Yo, he's 24 months old." It's like, "Yo, he's 2 years." I think this would be appropriate for us in saying it's like it's 36, 48. It's 50 plus weeks, 50 plus months. That's it. we're 50 plus months old in terms of where we are currently sitting within knowing each other. Dude, you are coming up on one of the longest people that I've known in existence.
I'll take that.
No, seriously. I think there's Chris that I'm still constantly communicating with.
Yeah.
Chris, Shallow, Junta, you. And then it just slowly filters down through the Prescript staff on the year basis of as it's kind of come up, which is, I don't know if it's sad. It's not sad. It's definitely not sad because I like my little small circle of people that I trust. But PSL 1 is open. PSL 1 is for sale. So applied biomechanics, functional anatomy, 16 plus weeks, plus access to Discord through the collective, plus access to us with labs, which we are now running at 6 labs, I think, 5 to 6 labs, somewhere along those lines. And it really kind of sets the start in terms of your journey within Prescript and the continued education platform, along with your coaching journey. And at the end of the day, the more and more I am talking to coaches, which it seems to be a lot lately, just seeing, and not in a disrespectful way, but just seeing their inability to think about the critical thinking element of it, or ask questions why. I was having a conversation with a guy yesterday. Was in my DMs about a comment I left on his post or some shit, which I honestly, it is. I left the comment and I carried on scrolling and left the comment. It's like a dog video. That's kind of how this all went. And at the end of the day, it did what I was intending it to, or was hoping it would do. Is it created conversation and created stimulation of thought, right? And I just kind of led him down this track, and we had the back and forth from the conversation, and I questioned, a little bit of his thinking. And by the end of the day, at the end of the day, he can tell me just to fuck off, and you know what? That's so okay. Right, and I think that's the different side of how we do these things. I'm not doing this. You don't do this to swing your dick around and I'm smaller than you and bigger than you. I don't care. Honestly, I don't care that enough. What I care about is trying to make more impact on people in the long run from the fitness space, and that's going to start with the way that we educate and we talk to individuals in terms of the people in power, i.e., the coaches, right? And that's actually what I care about. And everyone is adults. You can do with it what you want. You can just understand that there's consequences to actions, positive and negative in terms of these things. And the conversation turned into a really good conversation from that. And it kind of re-solidified the thought process that we have had and I have had with regards to physique development, specifically around females and glute development, of hey, this is the missing key. This is where people are not fucking up, but they're just missing the forest for the trees. Everyone's just gone with the whole how do I stimulate the glutes? It's not about that. You're trying to jump to how do I put as much tension across muscle fibers of the glute fibers specifically in this conversation, but I'm always having to kind of, strengthen a weaker structure. It's like, it's not the strengthening of the weaker structure. It's like, what is your failure point? It's like, well, they always land up in an anterior pelvic tilt. They land up failing in the movement from like and his kind of words were, you know, they lack the strength, or they lack like the strength for the stability side. And I was like, that's two different concepts. It's two different things. And it's like, okay, could we put them in better positions to do this? And like just having the back and forth conversation around what was going on. And eventually was like, oh fuck, I can see what you're referring to. It's like it's a positional dependency thing, essentially. And it's like if we put them in better positions and progress via these progressions in the positions and what an outcome of what we're trying to do, we put people in a position. Excuse me. We put them in a position to essentially produce more force. Production of force in a more stable environment allows for more muscle hypertrophy in the long run. It's like, so if we stabilize the pelvis, we put more tension into the direct muscle fibers of what we're attempting to do, and not call upon musculature that is not supposed to be doing what it is doing. We had a really like he had an example of what we were kind of going through, and he's like, yeah, all my girls get like a tight lower back, like their QL and their hip flex. And I was like, yeah. It's like, what do they do? What do they say? Like, that should be the red light on the fucking dashboard running around. Or like, hey, this is something that is not supposed to be doing this job.
It's interesting with that because especially in hypertrophy, in this aesthetic focus, in chasing sensation, oftentimes in those conversations you hear that sensations are being ignored. And so it's like, hey, I'm trying to feel my upper glute, but I'm completely ignoring that my low back is flaring up in trying to pursue this. It harkens back to really trying to find those positions, trying to take a not necessarily different, but just a clearer understanding of what an individual's limitations are and what opportunities we have through movement that we can create, instead of trying to find what is the optimal or what is going to be the most definitive way to grow the muscle, without a consideration of let's just start in a good position. And from there, does the question ever arise, do I need to change this? Do I need to try to seek out something more advanced, something more unique, or something more novel? I think you and I's opinion on that would be, if you operate in a better position, you can take that a long, long way. And so the question, to find some of these more novelty exercises that we'll see on the internet or that we'll have together, that you'll have a coach come to you and, trying to break down why are you doing this, kind of explain the thought process to me, that a lot of times it doesn't need to go there because you've already found solutions, instead of trying to seek out what's not being done without understanding what's not being done is just at the base level of that positional exposure, positional dependency. If we have that dependency, can we resolve that to give more options and variety? Just again, in more options and variety, not in dependency, but that doesn't automatically mean it needs to be have this, specialty exercise or anything like that. And I think that's a lot of the conversations that we'll find ourselves in, and like the conversation that you were having, going through and looking at some of these things, is like, okay, let's understand, yes, we're doing a movement, but what are the components that are actually happening in this movement? And for that efficiency, or if you actually wanted to try to reclaim optimal, what optimal is that we have these qualities that are syncing up and actually working, and it's not just based on an exercise is more or less optical, but it's the execution of that movement that is going to make it more or less refined for somebody and what their goals are going to be.
Yeah, I think, you know, what I was trying to really run at, and what kind of kept coming to the forefront for me within this, is a lot of what we we're talking about and what we're going through, and like high level high level coach with regards to kind of results, getting good things from that standpoint. Very isolated with regards to movement structure. And what I mean by that, so everything was muscle centric. Everything was how do I, and like good on dude. He chased it in terms of like glute growth. Like that's his thing. He's doing cool. Fucking go for it. Like make your bread. But the elements behind it was, and what kind of came to the foresight for me or forefront to me is we need to just we need to have the understanding of what the base is of what we're working with. I think that like at the end of the day, it comes down to a simplified approach allows for more complexity in the long run. Right? If we've got girls, guys, whatever, we got girls and guys doing. Uh, we were kind of referring to kind of like a leaning back, so training some form of more hip extension back, abducted movement on an abducted machine, like something. And looks not an exercise idea, but give anyone right in terms of in terms of what I do in terms of the frame, like not an exercise I would give, but I will also say this: not an exercise I would give to an online client. If I was doing in person and I was working with a level of athlete that I was trying to work with, I feel like there's a category of exercises that starts to become more applicable and more available. And hear me out. Now, as I'm saying this, I am kind of thinking from a sports performance realm, and I feel like I feel like I could be wrong to a certain degree. And I actually want you to call me out on this if I am. So the comparison I'm going to make here, I'm going to make a comparison, and at the same time, I'm going to then deviate from that. Comparison is what we see in S&C, and we've spoken about this. S&C specifically in person, right? Specifically in person S&C, overcomplication of what's going on and what's needed from a training program and with an athlete, right? It's almost like they double down on like the half a percentile things while missing everything else. Right now, I'm going to say the exact same thing, that if I did things in person, I'd probably have a lot more complex based movements occurring purely because I can set them in the position that I want them and be a lot more tactile QE for what I'm attempting to do. It's very difficult to hip extension, leaning back, abducted machine 3 sets by 10 on my spreadsheet. Like, can you imagine the fucking training videos that I'm going to get back from that? It's gonna be a shit show, right? But so as I kind of just mentioned there's these two complication sides. The base foundation, though, or what I'd kind of get at and where I'm going to give myself the argument that I could do that and be more complex with it, is I have a progression model in my head of where I would take someone to in terms of that. What we tend to see within the S&C realm is the base foundational shit isn't done, and we go to the 1% because the 1% are not flashy. And I'm not throwing shade at anyone. I put my hand up. I haven't spent years sitting in an S&C facility working with athletes from that standpoint. But a lot of times when I look at this, or I do consults, or I do like concierge work with it, it's just too much. It's too much fluff when like they can't control their pelvis. So I look at it as like the gen pop and the athlete a lot of the times are the same problem. The athlete just has the ability to learn faster. So if I can teach them faster, build that base foundation up faster, now take them to the complexity side in an in-person setting, I'd probably I wouldn't get better results. I get fucking great results online from that, but I would be able to implement the more complex based structure movements, more isolated in the 1% of what I'm attempting to do, but also not forgetting that the foundation and all the other shit that matters is there. This is just the 1% on top of it. That was a really strange question statement of what I said. I'm sorry I jumped around, but you get what I'm saying.
Yes. So what I would say to it, at least on the S&C performance side of it, is I think part of this is the distinction between personal training and strength and conditioning. Is personal training creates the opportunity to really get into I'll say the weeds, but really what should be the basic of nitpicking nitpicking somebody's position and spending time to allow that to be corrected. Where S&C, a lot of times, it's going to be kind of more templated work in that the traditional route you'll see is somebody interned, they learned under somebody, they ran somebody's system, then they either carried that system forward or tweaked it a little bit, but it's a continuation of a continuation of a continuation. Most of the time, it's not on the one-on-one training side of it where it's like, okay, I'm creating this individualized program. A lot of time it's this team dynamic that we begin to filter people through. And in that, I think that's where the eye of a personal trainer to start evaluating, okay, is somebody losing pelvic position as they're going into a squat, and we need to spend time in correcting that. Whereas S&C, it might be, okay, have 10 guys, did they get down and did they get up? So we're not getting into that, or we might not see that macro or micro level of either precision or of trying to identify what somebody's individual limitations are to create those changes. Also, with that, a lot of times we don't see as much of that progressive and regressive model built into how we approach training a team. Like you were saying, you already thinking about the adductor, you are or abduction machine, you already have what a progressive model would look like that you would execute in person or how you would ease that into. Whereas I've seen it, and again, this is just from my experiences, by no means for the mass of the whole, but a lot of people will do an Olympic lift variation because that's all they've ever been taught, and not the understanding of, am I even good at teaching Olympic lifting? It's a lot of the times it's going to be kind of, again, this templated model of potentially what somebody's was, what somebody's was, what somebody was. And this is how I understand it is this exercise does this, but as far as the variety that we might see a personal trainer understand from that progression and regression, how to build up to that, maybe it's more limited because we're trying to identify how it can apply to a team as a whole. So that might
I-
be, yeah, how I would
I've got
go off of that.
yeah. Sorry, I've got some really good. I got a follow up conversation I want to have in regards to what you just said. Please remind me, S&C and creating a model is kind of what I think we can do with that. We either touch on it now or we carry on from there. Sorry to cut you off because I know
No,
what's
you're
going to
good.
happen. I know exactly what's going to happen. Okay, so you say from that one side, the next continuation.
Yeah. So kind of thinking about, that's kind of how I would think about it, is the individualization of movement that a coach or a personal trainer is looking to, opposed to S&C, where it's a lot more of that larger scale focus because often that's the situation that they're in. With that, again, I think there's some variability to both, as far as on the S&C side of it, what we can look at, they're a lot more familiar with periodization than your average personal trainer, of thinking about how this works in phases and how to actually plan something around a calendar year building up to events. So in that, these comparisons where I do think it is potentially lacking in how we individualize or how we modify things for an individual. But again, that's kind of the context of, I think, how the industries work or what that expectation is. What I would say to that is, this is to the original conversation you were having. This is kind of the question I pose for performance coaches, S&C coaches, personal trainers, coaches in general. Are you looking to expand your knowledge outside of your own capacity, or do you understand the exercise that you can proficiently implement with a client or an athlete. Because to the online in person discussion, one in person, you should, that should be how it works, is like you have a larger model that you can operate off of exercise that are available to you, because you have the ability to refine that, to correct that, to advance that. Whereas online, sometimes that's going to be limited in your ability. And so for a coach in either capacity, being able to understand what is my limitation of being able to implement it, on top of the individual that I'm working with, what is their limitations. I don't think that's always thought about. I think it's, as we've talked about several times, muscle centric first, maybe a layer deep in position if you've spent any time listening to this podcast, but also understanding what's my capacity as a coach in person and online, because it should be a different list. You are the if those lists don't look different, then you think you are the best coach in the world and you're not. Or if you've taken a very, very restrictive way in how you program, that we're not really going to see these branches off, that you're potentially missing opportunities to expand the exercise that you can develop, that you can utilize in person. But typically online, it should be a reduced exercise library. Not everything needs to, or probably should be, on the list of things that I can implement. It should be, yes, you should be knowledgeable in it, but also, again, there should be some criteria that is going to be self limiting in how you apply these exercises, that can you get the most out of your client, thinking about what are your limitations to be able to prescribe those exercises, and what's going to be the client's limitation to execute those. I think of like the list of exercise that I'm knowledgeable in, that I've done, but I know a limitation both in person or online. Any Olympic lifts. Like, I'm very, very limited to. In person, we could work towards it. We can build some variation, but that wouldn't be something I'm comfortable in. Whereas compared to you, you have clients that compete in Olympics, or sorry, in weightlifting. And so you have more of a comfortability. So whenever we're looking at that, like for me, this is criteria that I would self limit. And I don't know that enough coaches have that distinction in their ability of knowing what they can effectively implement through an online platform, and how that might be different in person through that self-limiting of understanding the exercises, more from just what the exercise is supposed to be, but actually understanding how the exercise breaks down.
Yeah, and I think you bring up a great concept there, of the idea of like the self limit. And it's not that you must self limit in terms of not give yourself an opportunity to continue to learn, but it's almost like knowing your scope of practice. It's like, what am I dead set 100% fucking comfortable in doing? Like, what can I have, on a daily basis? What can I have on a daily basis that if you asked me at any time, I could confidently hold a conversation with you? Like, that's almost like the question you should be able to ask yourself and have an answer to. And that's almost, I'm not saying that that's where you should necessarily stop. You have to fuck around and find out to kind of see where you're going and keep moving. But that's the education side. That's the experience side. That's the continuation with all of these things kind of moving forward. We just need we need a we need we need time in the trenches to understand how to move things forward off the back end of that. It's like that's kind of where it becomes your beneficial that becomes beneficial to you of building up your repertoire of what you do and get better and better and better. It's like you acquire a skill, you process it, you learn it, you implement it, you do it, and you do it, and you do it, and you do it until essentially it's the do one, see one, teach one, except it's not one, it's do it multiple times uh, in this time period. That's kind of how I think or should see these things. Now, as you mentioned, those things are different in person versus online. You have to come up with a way to do it slightly differently online versus in person. You take your experience from in person, you take your experience with regards to what you see fail in the base foundational element, and then you start to build off of that. And I think to bring it back to everything that we were kind of originally speaking about here is it comes down to foundational practice within these positions. Get those right from the very beginning with regards to athletes, gen pop, anything from that. It's like, how do you stabilize your pelvis? Where do you put your meat suit in space? How do you orientate that? Right now, we generally find, and not to, not to template it, but let's template it, because ultimately at the end of the day, there's only so many very small variations. It's like most people are just falling forward fucking all the time. There's just this forward, like center of mass is falling forward. And I hate that we come back to center of mass every single time, but I don't. Why I hate it is I feel like it is misunderstood by so many people. Like even just the concept of center of mass, like most people don't understand, or like even if you just say like COM, they're like, what is that? It's like, okay, cool. Immediately start thinking in terms of where this is. Now, if you have someone falling forward all the time, it's like your immediate reaction should be, how do I give them an option to not? And I think that's like the phrasing, and what I've been trying to really think about with regards to center of mass is I don't want to change your center of mass. Like, and what I mean by this, I don't want to take you away from the thing that you have been doing very well at for a long period of time, or doing for a long period of time. What I want to do is give you access to be able to move away from it and be okay there, and move back into it and be okay there. Because imagine if you change someone's center. It's the whole thing of the tennis player. They do 1,000 shots or strikes or whatever the fuck, or returns on their strong side, and then you turn around and are like, well, we have to get your weak side the same, and we're going to spend as much time as we can till that happens. What's going to happen? They're just going to get really shit at playing tennis. That's it.
We're wasting a lot of time.
We're wasting a lot of time, right? And that's kind of the whole point at the end of the day, is that if you do just a full regressive model, and unfortunately rehab falls into this. Okay, rehab goes full regression and goes, I have to take them away from where they were completely and just try and build that. It's like, but the thing that they were doing, yes, for lack of a better word, could have been incorrect, but it is a position that they can do a lot of things in. It just was an accumulation of time over that caused an issue. Right? So if I have someone whose forward center of mass is there all the time, but they squat heavy, and like they move relatively well, yes, there are going to be niggles or injuries or things that come up as a byproduct of that. As I've just said, an accumulation of issues. My goal is to try and decrease the amount of risk towards that issue. That comes from giving them exposure to outside planes, or planes that is not the position that they've been in all the time. Right? So you give them a little bit to the other side, and like get them strong there, get them stable there, understand what that does. That doesn't mean I take you away from the thing you can do. The best example of this, in my opinion, is, we go some form of like a front squat. So we got an anterior load, which is kind of like good. That's going to shift that center of mass back. This is an individual who is forward, right? So we go into a front squat versus a back squat. Okay, front squat is going to be more anterior, shift that center of mass back. We can produce force. Like, they could squat well, they could do heavy loads. The regression is not necessarily a load regression that's going to occur. They're still going to work very hard within the front squat. Cool. Let's put them in a front squat. Now, as a secondary supplemental exercise, I have options. I can run a split squat variation, and I would run some form of split squat variation, and this is where you as the coach make the decision. You go, where do I and what do I need to do? Do I need to continue to bring that center of mass back? Or can I run a front squat and put them on a Bulgarian split squat bilaterally loaded? Bulgarian split squat is going to push them naturally forward. Bilaterally loaded is going to complement the position of center of mass that we are pushing into. So we're essentially going to take think about the dumbbells are going to orientate themselves as we go down to the bottom and find that stretch position of the glute and then produce force of internal rotation to bring ourselves out of this. The dumbbells are going to be in line with kind of like the midfoot ish where we would produce as much force as possible. Right? We have this forward center of mass kind of occurring. I haven't I haven't decided to just take them away from center of mass moving forward completely. I've introduced something that gave them exposure under heavy load, fair, more load than what they would do on the Bulgarian, but that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that because we know that when they're back squat and they keep going forward, when I double down on the position, if I did a Bulgarian split squat off the back end, I've now just hammered the same position over and over. What happens, or what did I say happens when we continuously hammer the same position over and over, specifically in this case? Injury. Applied force greater than tissue tolerance. Right, so now we have like a front squat that's going to bring us back, expose us to a position that the body hasn't necessarily been in to produce force. Then we can go back to the thing that, yes, it's a position they're used to, but is underloaded. There's nothing wrong with that. That process works, but it doesn't work if you just double down on the same thing over and over and over again. That exacerbates the issue. It's like, well, squatting made you squatting hurt you. Let's just not squat again, and you're just going to go and do leg press. It's like, hold on. The leg press is a squat. It's the same kind of mix in terms of these things. You have to be a little bit smarter, a little bit, not a lot. We do it, so not a lot. Well, I do it. You're fucking more intelligent than me. I do it, and I get this right. It's like, it's not hard, but you have to understand the concepts of these things.
And I think as far as speaking to concepts, that's something that I know for myself and both of us, because we're sitting here having this conversation, but something whenever we first took PSL1 to kind of bring it back is the concept of stability, of center of mass within base of support. And you can use center of mass or base of support as your component to be able to manipulate to get results, to utilize those positions that somebody has developed and built up in while being able to diversify, while being able to create change very, very quickly through that one concept or that one definition of stability, looking at that center of mass of being able to change and manipulate levers, looking at basis support, how creating those distinctions or having a shift in either adding or reducing very quickly adds into this principle. So instead of seeking out, okay, what's another way? I'm having issues here. What's another way that I'm going to continue to chase a way for our quads to develop because I'm taking that muscle centric approach, and that leads me to the leg press where now I'm doing this weird thing where my feet are turning out because I'm trying to focus on one of the quad muscles specifically instead of just looking at it of, oh, he's getting his shit pushed forward. Can we either get some ability where he doesn't live here, where he has the ability to move in and out of it, or can we look at, hey, can we give him assistance and expand that basis support a little bit so he can be more proficient whenever he needs to operate in that center of mass forward position, that he can operate more proficiently because he's not as reliant of just trying to not fall over and reduce down to that core thing most people are trying to avoid throughout their day falling over. What are ways that we can change that being the life that they're living whenever they're training, and potentially how's that going to assist in everyday life? But we've just reduced a conversation down to one task that we're trying to complete, but how the ripple effect of that task can amplify and eventually turn into a tidal wave of all encompassing being able to resolve a lot of things very quickly. It's this conversation of, I've brought it down to a simple point, and it's pretty easy to solve simple problems that this is, I think of like grade school. It's the difference between the, like, am I trying to add 1 + 1 being 2, or is there a paragraph long thing that I'm trying to work through that is the exact same answer. And so reducing that down, it's that strategy of like, okay, this is just filler. Like this is just noise here. We don't need to know about Jim and his wife and the eggs because that's not part of what we're trying to solve. That's just outside noise. And a lot of times people are going to get caught up in just reading through or hearing all that noise, that they're reading the long paragraph and not able to pick out the key components to simplify the problem. Once you simplify it, it's should be very easy to be able to resolve because it's a focal point of what we're trying to correct. And it's very objective of, is this being done or is it not?
Yeah, it's like you mentioned, dude. It's the simplistic look at the problem. It's like I like that analogy of kind of the word problem versus the 1+1. It's even like the 1+1 in a fucking brackets times a this, and at the end of the day, it's just like it's don't get caught up in the noise. Look at the basics of it at what we're looking at, and once you can, and not even once, and maybe fuck, are we going back to this? Or there was a time period where everything was just like going back to the basics of shit. And we just spoke about that for like 2 months, but that's what it comes back down to. It's can someone orientate their meat suit in space? That's it. I genuinely believe like that's the answer, and like the questions you ask off of that answer dictate where you start going with your program. The only thing you really have to think about from there is what advancement or what at level of training is the individual capable of, and how do I progress or regress their current state to then move them forward or move the needle forward. Like, do we barbell squat or do we goblet squat? That's the answer that you ask off of, can they orientate their meat suits? Nope. Cool. Which one am I doing? Am I doing a doubling down on a center of mass going forward, or am I trying to restore some form of ability to move back? All right, restore ability to move back. Okay, well, they've been training for a good time period. They squat 300 kilograms. I'm not saying that a goblet squat may not be effective for them, but it's like, hey, the amount of load that I'm going to get out of a goblet squat is probably not going to move the needle for what I'm looking for. So let's use a progression that's an anterior load that isn't a goblet squat, that's more loadable. Front squat, zombie squat, whatever I want to add into the mix in terms of that. That's the base question is that. And then from there, you start asking the questions of where and what implements do I put in place to move the needle forward.
Yeah, and that's really the focus of it, is that continual progression and being able to adapt, being able to modify whenever we've run into limitations or we're working with an individual that has some of these things that start to compound. Oftentimes, if you just bring it back to the simple questions and find solutions in those, it clarifies things. And I think that's a good practice for trainers and coaches to go through, is look at a complex situation and think, how can I reduce this back to something simple that makes sense of how I would implement it? And, just not necessarily to open up a whole nother discussion. We might go to this at some point, but whenever I started to look at cheer and dance, I knew nothing about either of those areas. Those weren't my expertise. I don't have a background in it, but I could easily look and see, okay, they are very dependent on this more lordotic position of kind of overemphasizing because they're presenting. And so, bring it back like, okay, I don't know the complexities to teach somebody how to do a back handspring with a round off in it or any of this, but it's like, I know how to get somebody's ribs to stay stacked over their pelvis. And I know whenever I do that, that being brought into an option for an athlete to you is going to allow them to drive more force that can transfer over to the things that they're doing, to the pressing, to the jumping, to the flips, all of that. And so starting from that and starting to build it out, it can be as simple as that. It's like, hey, what'd you do? How'd you help the cheer team very, very little amount that I helped, more so their actual coach, because I'm not a
Still,
cheer coach. But you know, how in working with you were they able to get second in at nationals? It's like, well, the basics. We
the
got the
basics. You
basics
built
down.
resilience in the basics. That's it.
Yeah,
It-
whenever they
it's
have somebody standing on top of them, I know that their pelvis isn't going to give out and they're just going to have to hang on for dear life of their lumbar spine, because we've worked on using their muscularity in a position that is going to be durable, that they're resilient to maintain that position. And it can be as simple as that if you start approaching or start thinking about, or kind of problem solving in that way, thinking about what is being missed in the basics and how can I assist in getting access to that, in developing that, that it doesn't have to be overly complex.
Yep, basics. The basics work. On that note, guys, appreciate you. Possibly first recorded to put on YouTube. Possibly not. Who knows? Stick around and find out. On that note, guys, we will chat to you next week.